Hey guys! Tonight we sink beneath the currents of the mythic deep to a place before even the gods had names. Imagine a sea that hisses with starlight and a sky that hasn't yet chosen sides. Salt winds ripple across your skin as the breath of Tiamat, the mother of monsters, rises and falls like the tide itself. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. And if you're listening from some forgotten coast or a busy city under neon stars, drop your location and the local time in the comments. I love seeing how far these old stories travel. Now dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are not born in a cradle but in a current. The sea rocks you no lullabies, only the gurgle of brine and the growl of something vast shifting far below. You are one of the children of the old salt mother Tiamat. You don't speak, not yet. You ripple, you gleam, you hum. You are not alone. Thousands of you are born in one trembling moment. Some have wings made of river mist. Others carry jagged mouths across their chests. A few like you are still shaping, still deciding whether to walk or slither or hover. But then comes the silence. The war has already happened. Marduk, god of the storm, has torn your mother apart, sculpted the heavens from her carcass, fashioned laws and calendars from her bones. You don't remember the blood? But the stars do. They blink slowly as if trying to forget. You are a leftover, a relic. Not quite God, not quite beast. Some call you a mythological inconsistency. Others, a divine typo. Historians still argue whether these leftover offspring called Ur-Draku primordial echoes were ever truly worshipped or simply feared enough to be remembered. You crawl from the water like sea foam mourning its own tide. The shore is not welcoming. Temples no longer light fires in Tiamat's name. In fact, her name is never spoken aloud. There are only euphemisms now. The great dissolver, the mother who frowned the first flood. Still somewhere in the reeds, you hear the rhythm of something that remembers. A pulse beneath the soil, a song woven into the roots of papyrus. You wander inland, cuneiform tablets, those ancient little bricks of clay, thought to be unreadable to the untrained glow when you touch them. Not because of magic, well, not entirely. Turns out your skin carries a faint electrostatic charge. Archaeologists later call it a rare biological ion field. Sure. You settle for a while in the ruins of a forgotten shrine. Its roof has collapsed. Owls now officiate the ceremonies. Once this shrine belonged to Lahamu, Tiamat's eldest daughter, a being of mist and logic. You do not know whether she was destroyed in the Great War or simply changed into something that now dreams in fog banks and tide pools. At night, your dreams are not your own. You see fragments, ribbons of teeth eyes that blink sideways, a net woven not from rope, but from the promises of gods. You see Marduk. He is always smiling, but not with his mouth, with the sky. You wake with sand in your throat. Down by the water's edge, someone has etched a spiral into the shore. Not with hands, but with movement, a crawling thing. A sibling, a warning, maybe both. As you trace the spiral with your toe, the tide surges and a voice, not in sound but in pressure, enters your chest. We are not forgotten, we are only waiting for the clay to remember. A crab scuttles across your foot, pauses and salutes. No, really, with one claw. Okay, maybe the heat's getting to you. The city of Eridu lies just beyond the dunes. Supposedly the first city ever built by the gods themselves. You'll head there next. You are not a hero, not a villain, not a footnote in someone else's myth. You are a ripple, and the water remembers. You reach Eridu just before dusk when the air thickens like boiled honey, and the date palms lean sideways from the weight of their own history. Eridu is old, older than Babylon, older than Uruk, maybe older than even writing. Some historians still argue whether it was a real city or a metaphor, some kind of allegory for civilization rising from the chaos of water. But here it is, cracked and crumbling beneath your feet. Dusty, sun-scabbed but stubbornly real. The city doesn't greet you, it eyes you. From behind shattered walls and half-collapsed gateways, shadows peer out with the memory of torchlight. Even the crows are hesitant here. They hop from pillar to pillar, as if the air itself is laced with something feral. You pass a row of mud brick homes that haven't housed anyone in centuries. The doors have been repurposed as tables for rituals, burnt offerings of barley and honey arranged in spirals that seem oddly familiar. Too familiar, you're being followed, not by a person, by a pattern. Everything in Eridu circles back on itself like the gods built the city with a compass instead of a ruler. Spirals, labyrinths, temple steps that lead nowhere unless you count the soul. At the center of it all rises the old ziggurat, not Babylonian massive, but unmistakably sacred. The gods once walked here, if you believe the clay tablets. More importantly, the stars did. You climb its slope. It's a slow, gravelly trudge that turns your calves to jelly and your thoughts into soup. But when you reach the top, the sun catches your shoulder, and for a moment the whole ruin seems golden, not metaphorically, literally glowing. There's no shrine left, only a flat stone platform, and a sky that stares back. You lie down. The stars above are not the ones you know. No Orion, no Big Dipper. Instead, they form the shapes of things long forgotten, serpent coils, triple moons, jagged ovals that twitch at the edge of your understanding. They shift, not like constellations across seasons, but like puzzle pieces rearranging on a whim. You remember something the old scribes wrote. The stars once obeyed many masters. Now they only pretend to obey one. You close your eyes and the cold creeps in, not from the air, but from memory. Yours or someone else's. In the darkness behind your eyelids, a map unfurls, not on paper, on skin, tattooed in glyphs too ancient for dictionaries. They're not letters, they're verbs, breathing, pulsing verbs. One symbol burns brightest an eye with a tear falling upward. You sit up. Below you, Eridu has changed. Torches flicker in the ruins. Not modern flashlights, but open flames cradled in shell bowls. Figures walk the streets, some humanoid, some less so. One glides on multiple knees, another has arms that bend wrong. All are hooded, all are quiet. You don't know if this is vision dream or time itself hiccuping. But you walk down into it anyway. The streets are clean, not modern clean, but ceremonially cleansed as if waiting for something holy or horrific. You pass murals etched into clay walls, scenes of Tiamat giving birth not just to monsters, but to laws, songs and light. A softer image than usual, no spears, no chaos, just a mother wide-eyed and vast whispering stars into being. You round a corner and freeze. A statue stands there, not of Marduk, not of Tiamat, but of something in between. The creature is massive, 7 eyes, 3 tongues, and wings made of overlapping fish scales. You don't recognize it, and that frightens you more than if you had. Beneath its feet an inscription reads, "We are the children of stars that do not shine." That crab from before, it's sitting on the statue's shoulder. Yep, Same little guy, probably. He waves again. Okay, maybe it's a cousin. Crabs are notoriously hard to tell apart. Suddenly the torches flicker out one by one. You're alone again. Eridu crumbles back to silence. The vision, if that's what it was, dissolves like wet clay. You stumble back to the ziggurat platform, heart pounding with something too old to be called fear. The sky watches, and somewhere just beneath your ribs a spiral hums softly. Not quite memory, not quite prophecy, but definitely a beginning. The road from Eridu stretches like a scar across the land, dry, cracked, and barely passable. You follow it with sand in your teeth and an ache in your knees, thinking this would be a lovely time for sandals with arch support. Instead, you trudge barefoot because dreams don't come with footwear policies. Your destination is unclear. You walk because the ground seems to lean forward as if nudging you towards something. Along the way, you pass petrified date palms, twisted by time and something stranger. Their shadows don't point the right way. Eventually, you arrive at what looks like a battlefield, though no bodies remain, just weapons, spears stuck upright in the dirt, shields cracked in half, a bronze chariot with one wheel frozen mid-roll, all of it dusted in fine white ash. This, you realize, is not a site of death, it's a museum of memory, preserved in ritual stasis. The First War, they called it. Not the first war among men that was probably over livestock or someone taking the last of the figs. No, this was the first war among gods, when Marduk took up his net, his winds, his sword, and turned the heavens against his own grandmother. Tiamat didn't go quietly. She birthed 11 monstrous children, each more bizarre than the last. Dragons with blistering hides, scorpion men, fish lions with crowns made of horn. Historians still argue whether these children were metaphors, allegories, or real spiritual entities witnessed by early Mesopotamian priests in altered states. You're not a historian, but the ground still whispers. As you kneel by a rusted spear, a breeze carries a faint metallic scent like bronze and heartbreak. The wind shifts the ash, revealing a strange sigil beneath your feet, a swirl inside a square crossed by lightning. A warning, a blessing, a sketch by a bored god. You don't get long to ponder it because the air starts humming. Not like music, like an argument between frequencies. Out of the haze comes a procession. Faint at first glimpses of long robes, gleaming helmets, serpentine tails dragging through the dust. Their echoes, ghosts, maybe. You step back as they pass, but they don't seem to notice you. Their eyes are glassy, fixed forward like actors locked in roles too old to question. One of them, a towering figure with crab claws and the head of a jackal, turns toward you suddenly. Its eyes meet yours, and you hear the war never ended. It just changed dialect. Then silence. The figures fade. The battlefield resumes its stillness, but your heart beats faster now, like it's remembering something your brain hasn't caught up with. You sit beside a half-melted shield and try to breathe. Someone once carved a poem into its surface. Most of it's worn away, but a few lines remain. The gods drew lots to rule the heavens. The beasts drew lots to dream. Instead, you close your eyes and picture it. Gods atop ziggurats tossing dice made of starlight and bone, arguing over calendars and rivers, while Tiamat's children wandered the dark, forgotten yet unbroken. You wonder if some of them survived not just in vision or whisper, but in form. You wonder if you're one of them. That's when you hear it. A thump, then another. Something is walking nearby. Heavy, four-legged maybe, You don't look. Not because you're brave, but because something ancient in your gut says don't. The thumps grow louder, then stop. Then a voice right behind your ear. He used our names as weapons. You turn fast but see nothing. Just that crab again, on the shield now, staring. Seriously, this crab is starting to feel like your emotional support nightmare. You rise and begin walking again, unsure if you're leaving the battlefield or if it's simply receding around you. A new trail opens, a thin one, winding between salt-crusted rocks. The land hums beneath your feet. You are not done. The first war may have ended in the myths, but here the silence feels armed. The salt in the air thickens as you travel, like you're walking through an exhalation that never ends. Your lips crack, your skin itches. The ground has turned to muck grey, glistening alive with the scent of brine and ancient things that prefer to remain unnamed. You're heading into marshland now, where maps go to drown and compasses quietly give up. The reeds are taller than you, their hollow stems whispering strange syllables that might be your name or a warning. This place isn't on any tour guide's list of Mesopotamian sites. In fact, most scholars avoid it, not because of snakes or quicksand, but because too many ancient texts describe it in half-finished prayers and nervous ink blots. It's the place where the unnamed ones are said to sleep. Children of Tiamat, not the majestic dragon lords or battlefield horrors sung about in temple chants. No, these are the misfits, the forgotten spawn, the ones who were strange, too odd to be painted on walls, too uncertain in form to be honored with statues. They didn't roar or fly or crush empires. They whispered, twitched, disappeared for years, then reappeared in dreams, old well water, or unsettling coincidences. You step carefully. Every patch of mud could be a mouth. Every ripple in the marsh could be a shoulder, a sigh, or something reshaping itself. You don't feel afraid, which is how you know you're in danger. Your first encounter is almost polite. A lump of reed root shuffles aside as you approach, revealing something vaguely humanoid, no scratch that frog-like, but with eyes on its palms and hair made of silt. It blinks at you once, then returns to pretending it's part of the scenery. You nod, it nods. Okay then. Another figure emerges from the reeds. This one hovers slightly. No legs, just trailing mist and a necklace of smooth river-polished bones. It emits a low gurgle that might be a greeting or maybe gas. Somewhere in the distance, a flute plays 3 broken notes and stops. You continue unsure whether you're intruding on a ritual or being escorted deeper. A thought lands in your mind like a coin dropped in a well. Not all monsters lost the war. Some just got tired of fighting. You kneel beside a small puddle just to catch your breath. Instead, you catch a reflection, not yours. A face stares back. Pale, scaled, symmetrical, but wrong. The eyes are onyx, the smile too still. You blink, the reflection doesn't. It speaks in your voice, he made gods out of clay, but forgot what salt can carve. The puddle evaporates instantly. You stand slowly. Nearby, a series of stone pillars rise from the muck, each etched with half-erased symbols. You recognize one, the spiral square from the battlefield. Another shows a curled serpent eating its own tail, but with a twist, its tail is a scroll. The last pillar bears a handprint. It glows faintly as you approach. When you press your palm to it, the ground shifts under you. You fall not far, but just enough to tumble through a film of water and land in a hollow space. A grotto. It's dimly lit by glowworms or spirits, or very tired stars. The walls shimmer with carvings, hundreds of creatures, none of them identical, all of them incomplete, as if halfway through being imagined. You walk among them and they whisper. They remember being loved, once, not by temples, not by gods, by stories. But their names were too strange, their shapes too fluid, their morals too inconvenient. So they were left out. You kneel and they crowd around you, not to harm you, but to be seen. And in that moment you realize Tiamat didn't just birth monsters to wage war, she birthed possibilities, things that didn't fit the divine order, fragments of maybes, dreams in the margins. You whisper a name, not one you know, but one that feels right. And for the first time, something in the grotto smiles back. Outside, the marsh begins to hum. The unnamed ones are listening. You climb out of the grotto with marsh water in your ears and someone else's lullaby stuck in your head. The sun has shifted. The reeds cast longer shadows, now sharp as blades, and in the distance, rising above the trembling wetland like a broken tooth, stands a ziggurat. But this one is cold. No braziers, no chants, just stone, dark, cracked and soaked in silence. A temple without fire. It shouldn't still be standing. The architecture is all wrong. Staircases that spiral inward, windows that never open, doorways just slightly too narrow for human comfort. It pulses with the kind of wrong that's almost right, like a word mispronounced in a way that still makes sense. You approach. A heron watches from a post, its feathers tipped with greenish black like sea mold. It doesn't blink, just stares as if waiting to see whether you'll survive the entrance. Inside it's cooler. Not in a refreshing way, more like stepping into a forgotten breath. Dust dances through columns of stagnant light. The air tastes like stone tablets and burnt cedar. At the center is an altar. Empty, blackened, cracked. This was once a fire temple, dedicated perhaps to Enlil or Marduk, but something has changed. The fire's gone. The priests have fled. All that remains are their arguments. Literally, their words are still here. Not as echoes, but as ink scrawled across the walls in urgent overlapping scripts. Notes, please, curses. We tried to erase her name. It grew back. Fire will not burn salt. The net fails at the edges. Historians still argue whether this temple once held a heretical sect, those who tried to contain the memory of Tiamat by purifying sacred sites. Some say they succeeded, others believe they simply poked a bear made of salt water and regret. You wander the inner chamber. A statue lies toppled on its side, humanoid but with sea urchin spines and a mouth sewn shut. The threads are gold. You don't ask why. A sound draws you toward the back, a quiet, rhythmic thudding like a heartbeat in stone. You follow it into a narrow corridor lined with clay jars. Some are sealed with wax, others have shattered, leaking black residue across the floor. Then you see it, a single jar still intact, glowing faintly from within. You lean close. Inside is a flame, tiny, blue, breathing. You feel it, heatless, hungry. A note is carved beside the niche she left a spark behind. We could not extinguish it. We could only pretend it was ours. You step back. Something shifts behind you. You spin, but it's only a priest. Or what's left of one. He, or it, has no face, just a smooth stretch of skin where features should be. Yet somehow he radiates concern, or maybe indigestion, hard to say. He gestures to the flame, then places one finger where his lips might be. A silent shh, then he crumbles into dust. Politely. You pocket the jar. Look, you don't know if that's allowed. but there's no official museum around, and honestly, the place could use a little arson therapy. You exit the corridor and return to the altar. This time you place the jar in the center. It doesn't light the room, but it warms the silence. Outside, the heron is gone. In its place stands a boy, no older than 10, naked except for a reed cloak. His skin is pale and glistening, his eyes reptilian, his feet webbed. You blink. He grins, showing small, needle-like teeth. "Come with me," he says, his voice thick like wet clay. "I'll show you where the others sleep." You follow him into the mist, and the temple breathes behind you. Not fire, not incense, but memory. The boy's feet make no sound as he moves through the mist, just ripples. Each step disturbs the marsh as if it's listening. You do your best to keep up, but your own strides are loud and clumsy, each one squelching like a sponge full of secret. He doesn't speak again for a while, just hums. A strange tune with no rhythm, no melody, and no right to be so catchy. You try to hum along, then realize it changes every time you think you've grasped it. Eventually, you reach a patch of land slightly raised above the wetness solid, but only just. Trees circle it in a loose spiral. They're wrong in the usual way: bark that seems to exhale leaves that shimmer in colors that have no name. One trunk bears a faint engraving, a spiral inside a square crossed by something new, a tail. The boy stops and turns. "You've got clay under your fingernails," he says matter-of-factly, staring at your hands. "That means you're half-written." You ask what that means. He shrugs. "It means you might be allowed inside." Then he crouches and begins scratching a circle into the dirt with one webbed foot. You watch, unsure if this is a ritual, a prank, or the beginning of a Mesopotamian summoning gone wildly off script. From the center of the circle, the earth begins to sink. And just like that, you're descending again. The ground pulls you both down, not like quicksand, but like an elevator, made of mud and memory. The descent is slow, gentle, even considerate. The boy whistles softly as you drop his tail, flicking in amusement. Yes, tail. You hadn't noticed it before, coiled neatly around his ankle like a pet snake. But now it sways freely, smooth and green with faint spirals of gold. Finally you land, a cavern. No, not a cavern, a nursery. Hundreds of alcoves line the walls, each one holding something different. One cradles an orb covered in feathers, another a nest of silver threads pulsing with breath. A third holds what looks like a mask made of obsidian and fog. You step forward. Some of the alcoves are cracked open, empty. Others vibrate softly, like cocoons dreaming of legs. "These are my brothers and sisters," the boy says, "the ones not finished yet." You ask why they sleep. He tilts his head. "Because they were born between lines." He gestures at your arms. "Like you. You try to protest. You're just you. Not a child of Tiamat, not half god, not even bilingual." But he just grins again. You think clay listens to just anyone. Historians still argue whether early Mesopotamians believed in shape-shifting deities, or if later scribes just got lazy, describing weird weather and called it divine behavior. Either way, you're starting to think shapeshifter is not a metaphor. The boy points to one of the sealed alcoves. A faint light pulses from within like a heartbeat trapped under skin. This one's named after forgetting, he whispers. He sleeps so the world can keep pretending the war is over. You kneel beside the cocoon. It's warm. It hums. You feel its rhythm syncing with your pulse, slightly offbeat, slightly seductive. Then a voice thin like reeds, scraping glass, whispers, "Wake me." and the calendars collapse. You step back quickly. The boy giggles. That's why we guard him. Even Marduk was scared of his dreams. You look around the room again. This isn't just a crypt. It's a vault of paused realities. A museum of what-ifs and almosts. You ask what happens if someone wakes them. The boy's tail curls protectively around his legs. Then the stories change. You sit for a while watching the sleeping children of Tiamat. Some look monstrous, some look beautiful. Most look like both, depending on your angle. It's peaceful here, but not safe, because beneath the peace is potential, and potential left too long grows teeth. The boy tugs at your sleeve. We have to go now. You nod. You're not sure why, but the nursery suddenly feels too aware of your heartbeat. As you rise, you notice a small inscription carved into the wall near the exit. We were not defeated. We were deferred. You follow the boy back up through the soft living mud. The nursery seals behind you with a sigh. Above ground, the mist has thickened, but now you understand it's not mist, it's breath. The children of Tiamat are still dreaming, and the world is still pretending they are not. The boy leads you east, where the mist thins, and the marsh gives way to drier ground. If dry means soft loam that squelches, like it knows secrets you'll never want to learn. Every few steps, a puff of spiced scent rises up, frankincense maybe, or roasted beetle shells. Hard to say in this part of the dream. Ahead, stone markers rise from the earth, some half-buried, others leaning like tired sentries. Most bear glyphs that have been scratched out, overwritten, or wept on. At the center of this forgotten grove stands an altar of white basalt, flecked with something darker, something redder. You've stumbled into the place they still call Dumuzi's Grove, though no grove remains. You don't need a guidebook to know Dumuzi was the shepherd king, the green boy, the seasonal lover of Inanna. The myth says he died, was dragged to the underworld and returned each spring, bringing barley and bees and terrible poetry. Tonight, though his grove is silent except for the song, a priestess stands alone at the altar, back to you, arms raised. Her gown is stitched with river symbols. Her hair spills like ink across her shoulders. She sings, not in Sumerian, not Akkadian, but in a language you feel in your marrow. It isn't a song of worship. It's a summons, and something is answering. You step closer, only to feel the ground buzz. The trees, what's left of them, tilt slightly inward. Shadows ripple across the soil, pooling at the priestess's feet like spilled ink, searching for form. Then it happens. A shape rises from the earth. Not Dumuzi, not anything you've read about in a museum brochure. It slithers first coils of vapor and scales, then limbs form backward at first, like dreams that correct themselves in real time. Its head splits, reforms, settles into something crocodilian. Not quite dragon, not quite god. It hums, not musically, mechanically, like the sound of reeds vibrating across hollow bone. The priestess does not flinch. She lowers her hands and whispers, "You are late." The creature blinks. You called the wrong name. Historians still argue whether the spring rituals in Sumer were literal resurrection ceremonies or dramatized agricultural pageants. What they don't usually discuss is that sometimes, very rarely, the wrong name got said and the old blood answered. You're not supposed to be here for this. You start to back away, but a vine wraps around your ankle, not violently, gently, like a grandmother's hand insisting you stay until dessert is finished. The creature turns towards you. Its gaze is sideways, slanted, familiar. It doesn't speak, but your chest compresses as if a message were being downloaded into your lungs. Dumuzi is not the only son of the soil. The priestess collapses either in ecstasy or exhaustion, or because that gown really isn't made for marsh walking. The creature slithers toward her, and with one claw it traces a spiral on her forehead. Then it looks at you. You remember the war. You want to deny it. You want to say you're just a dreamer with salt in your sock. But the creature seems satisfied anyway. It turns and dissolves back into the earth, leaving only a ripple in the altar's stone and a faint smell of cedar blood and longing. The priestess stirs, her eyes open. They're not her eyes anymore. They are ancient, and they look straight into yours. We called for growth, she says slowly, but the roots we touched belonged to another mother. Then she sleeps again. You walk away, not because you want to, but because the trees lean outward now, ushering you, politely, firmly, like security guards made of bark and old hymns. At the edge of the grove, you pause. The boy is there again, waiting. He looks older now, not physically, in posture, like he's been holding something heavy. You heard her, he says. The children are waking, even the ones who sleep through names. You nod. The marsh, the mist, the echoes. They're all singing a little louder now. Somewhere deep in the land's belly, the old lullaby is playing in reverse, and the gods, they're starting to remember the verses they tried to forget. You follow the boy along a riverbank where the Euphrates bends like a lazy serpent swollen with secrets. The water is strangely still, not mirror still, but alert, like it's holding its breath. Every few seconds a bubble rises, pops and releases a faint scent of crushed mint and copper. You kneel to drink. And the river remembers you, not gently. The moment your lips touch the surface, your vision explodes like color. An ancient sound floods your senses like someone yanked open the curtains of time with both hands. You don't just see the past, you feel it. The first image is a throne made of fused vertebrae, not metaphorical, real bones, layered, polished, and humming with purpose. Upon it sits a creature with skin like wet parchment and eyes made of molten lead. Not Tiamat, one of her sons, a general, or perhaps a diplomat in a war with no terms. He raises a claw, and cities crumble. You're yanked again, sideways, backward, inward. Now you're standing in a market, but all the merchants are dragons, winged serpents hawking spices from floating trays. One of them, blue-scaled and wearing a turban, offers you a handful of glowing sand. Dreams for cheap, he says. You blink and you're back in a temple, watching priests with octopus tattoos chant in a rhythm that doesn't match their mouths. They chant in reverse. But your bones understand. Tiamat's children didn't rule with spears. They ruled with stories. Their governance was built on narrative law, a way of controlling reality by convincing it to behave. The chaos wasn't random, it was curated, like a museum of possible worlds. Each decree wasn't carved, it was told and believed, and then forgotten. You tumble again, one last time into darkness. This time it's not a scene, it's a memory, your own maybe. You're a child sitting in a clay-walled room. A woman sings to you in a language made of soft hisses and river tones. Her hands are webbed. Her lullaby makes the shadows on the wall dance into shapes that don't belong to anything human. She kisses your forehead and whispers, "One day the water will ask you to remember." You gasp and pull away from the river. The boy is watching. "You drank too much," he says. "Most people can't handle more than a sip." You lie back on the riverbank, heart pounding like a war drum under your ribs. Above you, the clouds form shapes briefly. A seven-headed dragon, a spiral net, a tear. Then they dissolve, embarrassed to be caught doing mythology without supervision. The boy sits beside you. She made us with memories, not bones, he says softly. That's why they fear us. We don't die, we just get retold. You stare at the river. The water no longer reflects you. Instead, it shows a courtroom, a trial. 11 figures stand in judgment over a 12th, smaller scaled and softly weeping. The charges: existence, inheritance, disobedience of silence. The verdict never comes. The vision shatters. You look to the boy. He's drawing in the sand now, slow loops and jagged slashes. It looks like a map until it starts moving. The lines shift. The river responds, currents tightening then loosening. A fish leaps. A shadow passes overhead. You ask what he's doing. Teaching the river how to remember better, he says, as if that's a normal Tuesday activity. Historians still debate whether water rituals in ancient Mesopotamia were purely symbolic or if they believed rivers had consciousness. One cuneiform fragment simply reads, "The river lied," which suggests, yeah, they had doubts too. You rise. There's something new on your arms. Faint spirals in silver dust, marks of memory. Temporary maybe, but then again, so is everything. As you leave the bank, you whisper a single word back to the water. You don't know its meaning, only that it belongs here. The water ripples once gently, and for a moment the sun reflects back not your face, but hers. Tiamat, not monstrous, not maternal, just vast and still waiting to be remembered. Night finds you wandering through ruins again, though this time they aren't grand ziggurats or decayed temples. These are homes tucked beneath collapsed rooftops and buried under centuries of sand. Mud brick walls lean inward, trying to whisper to each other through time. It's quiet. Too quiet. Even the insects seem to be holding their breath. You're in what used to be a neighborhood, one of the oldest known settlements from Sumerian clay records. A village without a name, or more accurately, a village with too many names to keep track of. No one's sure what it was really called. The surviving tablets refer to it as the place where the dark was shelved. You step into what was likely a family's home, a single-room fire pit in the center, sleeping platforms around the edges. But it's what's beneath the room that calls you. A staircase, not carved, not built, grown. It descends in a perfect spiral, made of black clay, so smooth it reflects your skin in warped waves. You follow it without question, because in stories like this, turning back always seems to cause worse things than going forward. You reach the bottom. A chamber opens up round and candlelit, but no candles, just glow. Faint like the light inside closed eyelids. The floor is covered in figurines, hundreds of them, maybe thousands, each one only a few inches tall, shaped in clay and baked to a perfect hardness. But these aren't the dignified idols you see in museums. No noble beards, no elegant headdresses. These have too many eyes or none. Some have 6 arms. Others have teeth carved where ears should be. One looks suspiciously like it's dabbing. They're wrong in all the right ways, and when you touch one, it hums. Not loudly, not in sound exactly, more like a pressure inside your eardrum. A recognition. It hums again. So you pick it up, and suddenly you're somewhere else. A room filled with scholars, ancient, young, timeless, all arguing at once. They're just votive tokens, pre-Sumerian fertility charms, proto-demonic thought forms, echoes of Tiamat's afterbirth. Then silence. They all turn to look at you. One scholar, eyes like fossilized obsidian, leans forward and says, "They remember the shape of forgotten gods." You blink and you're back in the chamber. The figurine is in your palm. It pulses once, then goes still. The others remain silent, watching, waiting. You crouch and study a few more. Each one tells a different story, not with words but with posture. One is curled inward, hiding its face. Another raises one twisted limb skyward in triumph or despair. They're hard to tell apart at this hour. You ask aloud who made them. And from behind you comes the answer, mothers. You turn, it's the boy again. He's older still. His voice thicker now. He walks with a limp and a shadow that isn't his. He kneels beside you and runs a finger along the figurines. They were shaped during the silence, he says, when names had to be folded and hidden in toys. You ask if they're dangerous. He shrugs, only if you forget them too long. One of the figurines falls over on its own. You both stare at it. It starts humming, then another joins in, then another, until the whole floor thrums like a quiet choir, barely audible, but impossible to ignore. You step back, heart thudding. The boy grins. They're tuning themselves. You ask to what he only says to her, return. Historians still debate whether figurines in pre-Babylonian households were offerings, toys, or spiritual insurance. But some clay tablets suggest they were made by women alone in times of fear, not as prayers, as reminders. You leave the chamber, slowly, the humming fading behind you. But it doesn't leave your ears. That sound, that sensation is now part of your breath. Every time you inhale it, pulses, a rhythm, a memory. The figurines are waiting, not for worship, for witness. And tonight, you've been seen. You emerge from the figurine chamber, and the landscape has changed. Gone are the reeds, the ziggurats, the echoing ruins. Instead, you're surrounded by sand, wide, endless, yawning sand. Not desert exactly, but something older, something more suspicious. This isn't the sand that builds dunes. This is the sand that eats them. You walk each step, erasing the one before. The horizon twitches in the heat. The air hums not like wind but like static, like an argument between two weather systems that forgot their scripts. There are no tracks, not yours, not the boys', not even from wind. Because the wind here does not travel. It listens and it whispers. The desert eats the map. You keep walking. Eventually shapes rise ahead, ruins, half-swallowed bones of cities too stubborn to vanish. You reach them breathless, sun-dazed, and half-convinced you're hallucinating. A fallen wall, a broken arch, a chunk of tablet still clinging to the idea of narrative. You kneel and brush away dust. The fragment is etched with, "This was drawn in the shape of memory, but forgotten in the shape of law." You don't know what it means, but the sand seems pleased. From a nearby dune, something shifts. You turn and see a figure. Tall, cloaked in linen, stitched with copper thread, face hidden behind a mask shaped like a lion's snarl. The figure holds a staff with two heads, one smiling, one asleep. It speaks. You carry her breath in your chest. The wind recognizes you. You ask who they are. The voice is neither male nor female, but full of thunder held in check. "I am the cartographer of erased places." I trace a circle in the sand with the staff. Inside it lines and symbols rise, glowing, vanishing, reappearing. A map, but one that refuses to stay put. These are the roads before language, they say. They shift, they hide, because the world was not meant to be stable. Historians still argue whether the ancient Babylonians believed in maps that changed depending on who read them. A few rare tablets describe shadow paths, routes visible only during certain celestial alignments or after ritual intoxication involving fermented pomegranate skins and, yes, lizard tongues. You stare at the shifting circle. You recognize one of the symbols, spiral in a square crossed by a line. Again, always again. The cartographer nods. You've been walking her spiral since the beginning. All of this is just memory trying to anchor itself. You ask where the path leads. They kneel and press a finger to the symbol. The sand darkens. The winds hush. A single word forms below. And just like that, the map dissolves. The cartographer stands. If you keep going, you'll find the edges of the net, they reply. Then they vanish, not with flair, just gone, like a thought you almost had. You sit in the sand, reeling. The sun begins to set, painting the sky in blood and honey. The ground beneath you thrums once like a heart testing its beat. You realize the sand is alive, not metaphorically, literally. You whisper a word, any word, and the sand shifts, spelling it briefly before smoothing itself again. This is not a place of forgetting. This is a place of suspension, where old names rest waiting for mouths brave enough to mispronounce them back into shape. You rise. The spiral burns faintly on your palm now. Each step forward is swallowed, but something deeper keeps count, because here in the desert that eats the map, you are the ink. You walk until the stars start rearranging themselves. At first it's subtle. Orion's belt slips one notch to the left. The Pleiades blink out. A new pattern emerges, concentric spirals spinning counter to the calendar. The air tightens like the sky is reeling in a net. You've reached the edge of what was once called the place of binding. Ruins rise out of the dark sand like broken promises. Fragments of temple walls, scorched and cracked, cling together in a formation that feels less like architecture and more like a trap. At the center, you find it. A tangle of stone and glass, twisted like molten rope, scattered across the ground, like a god tried to crochet the universe and gave up halfway. This is what's left of Marduk's net. Not the metaphor, the actual net. Forged, the myths say, from the four winds and strung with the fibers of time itself. Used by Marduk to ensnare Tiamat, binding her body, silencing her chaos, and slicing order from her womb like a polite insurgency. But here now it's unraveling. You crouch and touch one of the strands. It hisses. You pull back, and the sand behind you flutters. Shapes move in the corner of your vision, too fast, too sideways. One seems to scuttle. Another glides backward through the air, like a skipped stone. You don't look too long. Instead, you examine the net more carefully. The strands are made of language, literal, readable language. Fragments of laws, prayers and promises etched into glass-thin fibers. Some are in cuneiform, others are in languages you've never seen. A few look suspiciously like legal disclaimers. One strand reads, "The child shall not rise from salt." Another, "Silence shall be enforced with sky." You notice gaps, rips, places where the words have melted. A breeze shifts across the ruins. Cold. Not temperature cold, lawless, the kind of chill that makes cause and effect swap seats for a moment. And that's when it hits you. The net isn't just fraying, it's fighting back. You lean closer and see the edges of the torn strands pulsing slightly like wounded tendons. Some are trying to rejoin, others recoil as if offended by their former attachments. Historians still argue whether the Babylonian net of Marduk was a symbolic representation of divine order or a literal spell woven into the foundations of their temples. But here now you realize it was both a binding mechanism, a scripted authority, a story that made itself real until it got tired of its own logic. You follow the net deeper into the ruins, ducking under arches and sidestepping collapsed columns. More strands lie across the path, humming faintly. One buzzes louder when you approach, then goes still. It recognizes you. You're not sure why, but some part of you carries enough of Tiamat's memory to disrupt the programming. You begin to hum softly. Not a melody, just vibration. And the net responds, not all of it, but one strand glows gently and rises, draping itself over your arm like a shawl. You hear no feel a voice. She was not chaos, she was context. The wind stirs violently. A spiral of dust coils upward in the center of the ruin. You back away as the ground beneath you splits, only slightly, just enough to reveal what lies beneath the net a basin. Empty now, but once it held her breath, not her body, her breath, the original air that preceded creation, unwritten, unordered, unbearable. The net had kept it down, barely. Now, with the net failing, a thin mist begins to rise. You inhale by accident, and suddenly you're not you anymore. You're a wave. You're a tooth in the mouth of a dragon. You're a lullaby carved into coral. You are her whisper, and it hurts. Only for a moment, then it passes. You fall to your knees, coughing, heart racing with someone else's pulse. The net goes still again, and one word forms across its unraveling threads. Soon, you rise, and behind you one strand snaps, no sound, just a pause in reality, as if the story flinched. You leave the shattered remnants of the net behind your hands, still tingling with static, your bones slightly out of rhythm with gravity. The land has shifted again, not visibly, but subtly, like a dream retold by someone with a poor memory. You know you're still in Mesopotamia, but it feels like the vowels have changed. Ahead lies a structure half buried in salt and shadow, not a temple, not a home, a library, though that word feels too tame. It's more like a vault of language. Tall clay shelves lean precariously against each other, groaning under the weight of cuneiform tablets, etched obsidian slates, papyrus scrolls preserved in beeswax. Cobwebs shimmer overhead like threads of forgotten syntax. Every surface hums with the tension of words waiting to rearrange themselves. You hesitate at the threshold, and the door opens on its own. Inside, it smells of ash ink and boiled fig leaves. The air feels thick with withheld breath. You step in, and every tablet seems to flinch. This is where you meet the alphabet that cried. Not a person, not a ghost, a script, a living language barely holding itself together. At the center of the library is a table. Upon it, a stone slab covered in glyphs that seem to rearrange themselves every time you blink. Letters shiver, slide, and reassemble into new formations, some legible, some not, some watching you. You sit. The slab does not resist. Your fingertips brush across a single line, and the room quivers. Suddenly, images flood your mind, not like memories, but like errors. A scribe scratching out the name Tiamat until his stylus snaps. A king ordering entire libraries burned when a poem made his nose bleed. A priest weeping as letters swim off his page and vanish into the floor. One fragment repeats in every vision the letters knew too much. You whisper this aloud, and the slab responds. Its surface glows faintly and the letters lock into place. You can read them now. The first stories were not spoken, they were wept. Then the letters dissolve again, morphing, curling inward like frightened animals. You ask aloud, why are they afraid? And behind you a whisper, because stories die when told wrong. You spin, no one there, just a figure-shaped hole in the dust. Okay, mildly unsettling. You walk among the shelves now. Some of the scrolls vibrate faintly as if aware of you. One drops from the top shelf, lands at your feet and unfurls on its own. The ink dances, it draws a spiral. Inside the spiral is a single phrase in a forgotten tongue, except you understand it perfectly. Words sealed the wound, but the wound remembers the sealing. You roll the scroll back up and tuck it into your satchel. Something tells you you'll need that later. Near the back of the library, a scholar sleeps at a desk head, resting on a pile of half-finished tablets, mouth open slightly in an exhausted O. You nudge them. They don't wake, but the tablets beneath them stir. The letters begin to cry, thin black streaks oozing from the glyphs like melted punctuation. You watch in frozen awe as they slide off the tablet and onto the floor, pooling into a single, oily phrase. She spoke in salt. We replied in fire. Then silence. Historians still debate whether Mesopotamian scribes believed letters had will. Some even claimed certain glyphs carried curses if written upside down or spoken in a funeral tent. One theory claims the entire Babylonian mythos was an accidental sentence, half-finished by a sleep-deprived priestess. You believe it now. As you head toward the exit, the scrolls rustle softly, not to stop you, to thank you. Outside, the stars are back where they belong. But the moon now has a spiral on its face. Like it, too, is remembering a language that once broke the sky. You leave the whispering library behind, stepping out into the night, with a satchel full of words that may or may not be sentient. The air is cooler now, laced with the scent of fire-roasted barley, and something fainter ink, perhaps, or fear. The road before you curls upward toward a low plateau. On top you spot the silhouette of yet another ruin, but this one glows faintly from within, not by torchlight, but from something subtler, stranger. You approach with caution. As you climb, shadows flit across the rocks like moths trying to remember how to fly. The wind picks up, and with it comes a distant sound, wings, not beating, whispering. You crest the rise and behold what the old texts once called the Library of Nippur, except it isn't quite a library anymore. It's evolved. The outer walls still bear the marks of scholars' carved prayers, cataloguing symbols, poetry fragments in Sumerian script. But vines have overtaken everything, etching their own twisting alphabet into the stone. And in the center of the ruined courtyard, something flutters. A wing, just one, feathered, molten grey, clamped under a stone tablet as if someone tried to pin it down mid-flight. You step closer. It twitches. The rest of the body is gone, vanished, dissolved, or never there. But this single wing remains humming like a trapped thought. You reach toward it. A burst of wind slams into your chest. The tablet cracks, and from the shadows of the courtyard, pages begin to move. Literal pages torn from scrolls forgotten in ash piles rise and flutter through the air. They twist, spiral, and form a shape. Not a person, a shadow of one, and it speaks not aloud but through the pages, fluttering around you. You seek truth. But truth molts. You ask what this place is now. The pages swirl a line and form a sentence. Mid-air. This is where knowledge learned to lie. You step into the center of the courtyard. The ground below is paved with shattered tablets, each one bearing words that tried too hard. laws that never worked, prophecies that contradicted themselves by line 3, names scratched out, rewritten, scratched out again. Among them one tablet pulses gently. You kneel. Its inscription reads, "Do not trust the archivist who never dreams." A gust of air lifts more pages into a spiral around you. Within the maelstrom you catch glimpses, a dragon reciting poetry to a moonbeam, a scholar with a mouth sewn shut writing with blood-dipped reeds, a child with scaled arms tearing pages from a living book one by one. You understand suddenly why this place is dangerous. It doesn't store knowledge, it mutates it, a sanctuary for unsanctioned truths, broken logics and stories that rebel against their own conclusions. Historians still argue whether the city of Nippur was merely a religious hub or something more, a place where scribes experimented with volatile language, risking not just memory, but reality. Some claim a fragment of Tiamat's breath was buried here to make the words sharper. You believe it now. The wing twitches again. You crouch beside it and whisper, "You're free." Nothing happens. Then slowly the feathers begin to dissolve, not into ash, but into letters. They drift upward and vanish. The trapped page phantom bows slightly and collapses into its component parchment, scattering like exhausted leaves. The courtyard falls silent. But as you turn to leave, you notice something new. A door. It wasn't there before, inlaid with spirals, crossed by a tail. Your familiar symbol again. You push it open. Inside is a single room, bare except for a mirror. You step closer. The reflection shows you, but not quite. Your eyes glimmer. Your skin shimmers like river silt, and your spine has scales. You blink. The image smiles first, and mouths a single word almost. You step back, close the door, and whisper to the stars above, who are now blinking faster than they should. Knowledge doesn't want to be free. It wants to be finished. You descend from the plateau with your shadow stretched long behind you, trailing like a forgotten suffix. The stars above keep rearranging themselves, coiling, blinking, twisting into constellations that feel more like accusations than patterns. The land flattens, a path emerges lined with broken obelisks and toppled columns. You pass them like mile markers of myth, each one bearing a single word, in a language the wind won't let you repeat. The silence grows deeper here. Not peaceful silence, the kind of silence that used to scream. And then out of the haze you see it, a city, or what's left of one. Its gates stand open, rusted hinges bent outward like they were forced by time or something older. No guards, no banners, just ruins veiled in ash and old guilt. You step through. Immediately you feel it. This city is not dead, it's sulking. The streets are carved with symbols, spirals, claws, eyes etched, not by hand, but by retreat. Buildings lean away from each other like they've been arguing for centuries. Windows are boarded from the inside. Even the crows perched above seem reluctant to caw. You've entered the city that refused heaven. It wasn't destroyed by war or flood. It simply declined. The tablets call it Irenmu, a name lost in official records but preserved in curses and whispered regrets. This was the city that said no. When the gods descended demanding order, worship, obedience, Irenmu bowed to none. It sealed its temples, burned its calendars, declared the divine hierarchy an unproductive narrative structure, ballsy. At first, nothing happened. Then the water receded, the crops failed. People began to dream in foreign tongues, not because the gods punished them, because the city had severed the signal. You step over a cracked fountain inside which floats a single lily, except it's made of obsidian and it hums. Down an alley, a mural survives barely. It shows human figures turning their backs on winged beings descending from the sky. One figure holds up a tablet bearing only a spiral and a line. Their message, maybe we will write our own ending. You enter what looks like a former council hall. Inside, benches sit half-melted by some forgotten heat. At the front, a throne carved from riverstone has been split in two as if by choice. But it's what's behind the throne that holds your attention. A mirror. Not polished metal, not glass. Still water held vertically in a stone frame. And the reflection is not you, it's the city, but different, alive, lit with fire, populated, and not just by humans. Scales, feathers, smoke, children of Tiamat walking among mortals as neighbours, shopkeepers, musicians, priests, lovers, no war, no worship, just coexistence. The vision ripples, you reach out to touch it, and your fingers pass through. The water pulls you in, not fully, just enough to remember. A version of the city that never happened, a possibility swallowed by fear. You yank your hand back, gasping. On your palm, the spiral square sigil again, this time glowing faintly. A figure appears in the doorway, not the boy, a woman, older, cloaked in salt-white robes, face hidden beneath a veil of reed fibres. Her voice sounds like it's being poured through a flute made of bone. We tried, she says, but stories always rewrite the cities. You ask who she is. A remnant, she replies, of the choice that wasn't chosen. She beckons you forward, leads you out the back of the hall into a garden that shouldn't exist. Fig trees, running water, birds with silver eyes. At its centre, a pool. Steam rises, the water bubbles with memory. She gestures, bathe in what might have been. You hesitate, but only briefly. The water is warm, not hot, not magical, just honest. As you lower yourself in visions come not of battles or prophecy, but of quiet lives. A boy with webbed feet selling dates, a dragon teaching children how to count using bones, a priestess lighting candles for no one. A world where Tiamat's children were not hunted, sealed, or forgotten, just accepted. Historians rarely mention Ir Enmu. If it existed, it left no royal records, no hymns, just strange accounts of peace. You soak until the water cools, the woman is gone. So is the city. You rise alone, but lighter. Somewhere far behind you the net trembles again, because refusal is contagious, and you've caught it. You wake at dawn with a dried fig in your hand and no memory of who gave it to you. The landscape has changed again. No more city, no more garden, just salt flats stretching to the edge of comprehension. Pale, cracked ground that crunches beneath your feet like the surface of a planet that gave up halfway through forming. The sky is pale lavender, the kind of colour dreams use when they run out of pigment. The air tastes like old metal, and then the earth twitches, not a quake, not a tremor, a breath. The salt cracks beneath you and releases a whisper from below, warm and slow, as if something vast is stirring beneath the crust. You take a step. The whisper returns. It isn't saying words. It's exhaling syllables. You realize with a strange sort of calm, Tiamat's pulse has returned. You drop to your knees and press your palm to the ground. It's warm, alive, and humming. The hum grows louder, vibrating through your chest, into your ribs, down your spine. The rhythm is uneven, as if it's still finding itself again after a very long sleep. And then a beat. A single boom beneath your hand, followed by silence. Then another. Faster now. The beat becomes breath, the breath becomes voice, and the voice becomes a heartbeat in the land. Something ancient is rising, not all at once, but piece by piece, syllable by syllable. The salt flats begin to shimmer, puddles appear, then widen, not water brine, viscous, heavy, with minerals rippling from no visible source. A thin mist rises from the puddles and begins to coil upward like steam with opinions. You step carefully through the flats, watching as old carvings emerge from beneath the crust glyphs, long buried by history and pride. The same sigil appears again, spiral in a square crossed by a tail. You hear a voice, but not from outside, from within, not words, not yet, but intention. Something like, "Remember me kindly," or "Not at all." You pause, because this is not anger you feel, it's melancholy, a memory stretching itself back into form after eons of being rewritten as a monster, a mistake, a myth, best whispered through gritted teeth. You move toward a small rise in the flats. From there you see it, a lake, or something trying to become one. In the center of it, the water stirs unnaturally, rippling without wind. From its surface, a shape slowly rises, translucent serpentine, coiling with grace. It doesn't lunge, it listens. It is not Tiamat, not her whole self, but a gesture, a memory of her motion, a shadow of her breath cast into form. She rises only halfway, then pauses, hovering like smoke that forgot how to vanish. You say nothing. Still she speaks, not in volume, but in weight. They took my name. Then they gave it back. Now I decide where it fits. You feel it again, that thrum in your chest, her pulse, your pulse, shared now. The shape begins to break apart, not in violence, but in release. Droplets of brine fall gently to the lake's surface, each one forming a ripple that echoes far beyond its origin. Historians still argue whether the Mesopotamians saw Tiamat's defeat as necessary order or a tragic loss. Some scholars suggest the entire myth of her death was a political rewrite by temple elites, desperate to justify their calendars. You suspect she never truly died. She simply became background noise until now. You kneel and touch the lake. It does not burn. It remembers. The droplets falling from her spectral form gather around your feet, and in each one you glimpse a fragment, a temple that worships silence, a child with gills and a name no alphabet can contain, a goddess laughing unshackled, carving stars with her fingernails. You look up. The form is nearly gone now, dissolved into mist, but her breath remains. It coils around you, warm and salt-sweet, and it says one thing: do not mourn me. Mourn the space they built from my silence. Then she's gone, and the lake goes still. Only your reflection remains, softer now, slightly serpentine, and for the first time, smiling. You leave the salt flats with your breath slower, your bones looser, and your thoughts older. There's a silence in you now that feels earned, like a room inside your chest that no longer echoes because something finally moved in. The path ahead winds into the hills, low, craggy and stubborn, dotted with thorny bushes and half-buried stones. You don't know where you're going, but the ground seems to. You come to a plateau just before dusk, and there, chained between two stone pillars, is a beast. Its body is massive, scaled and plated like the hide of an armored crocodile. Its face vaguely human, vaguely lizard, rests on folded claws. Its tail is coiled beneath it like a sleeping god's regret, but its eyes are open and lucid. No growling, no thrashing, just a slow rhythmic breathing that keeps time with the wind. You approach carefully. The chains hum faintly, not with tension but with language. Etched along their length are phrases that loop and repeat, contain the breath. Silence the sea, let the scales forget. The beast blinks once, then it speaks, not aloud, into your mind. I remember everything. You sit on a nearby rock, unsure if this is going to turn into a therapy session or a mythological trial. The beast tilts its head. You carry her spiral. You nod. Then you're allowed to listen. And it begins. It tells you how it was born, not in war, but in grief. A postscript of Tiamat's defeat, cast from her lingering breath and the dreams she never got to finish. It was never meant to fight, it was meant to witness, but the gods feared memory. So they caged it. They called me by a dozen names, it says, then buried them. You ask why it hasn't escaped. It blinks again. Because the chains aren't made of metal, they're made of belief. You glance at the inscriptions again. They pulse faintly every time you doubt. One of the shackles glows brighter. You're undoing them already, the beast says, gently, amused. You ask what happens if it's freed. It doesn't answer immediately. Then softly, people will remember stories that make no sense and believe them anyway. You realize it's not talking about destruction, it's talking about permission. Permission to imagine wildly again, to make myths with sharp teeth and kind eyes, to unsimplify the past. Historians still argue whether chained beast imagery in Babylonian murals was metaphorical, representing chaos under control, or literal, implying real rituals of containment. Some fringe theories even suggest these sites were designed not to house prisoners, but to store dreams. You believe it now. The beast leans forward. I'm not here to escape. I'm here to be heard. You nod, and it tells you everything. About the siblings lost in the war, about the creatures who fled to the edges of the world, about the whispers that still swim through brine pools and temple ruins, waiting for someone who remembers them without flinching. It weeps once, a single tear, not salt water, ink. It falls to the ground and instantly becomes a tiny spiral which then dissolves into dust. You rise and place your palm on one of the chains. The inscriptions shift beneath your touch. The phrase, "Let the scales forget," becomes "Let the scales choose." The shackle releases with a soft click. The beast does not run. It exhales a long, warm breath and says, "Thank you, now go." There are still songs hiding in the soil. You leave the plateau with dusk spilling across the hills like spilled wine. Behind you, the beast begins to hum, a low, ancient tune, and the stones hum back. The tune of the chained beast lingers behind you, curling in your ears like smoke from a fire that refuses to go out. You descend the hill with dusk now in full bloom, stars pricking holes in the sky, and the moon hanging low, heavy as a forgotten promise. Ahead, strange lights flicker, not torches, not candles, lanterns, but their glow is peculiar, pinkish, blue-edged, faintly translucent, like something trying to remember how fire behaves. You follow them as they float along a dirt path, bobbing like jellyfish in windless air. They lead you to a clearing, a circle of tents, worn, patchworked and stitched with symbols that make your vision wobble. The air smells of charred figs and wet parchment. Music echoes, faintly, pipes, drums, a single voice, singing out of key, and very much on purpose. Welcome to the Festival of Misremembering, a celebration that shouldn't exist yet. Here it is, bustling with activity, laughter, and a kind of intentional confusion. People wear mismatched clothes, priests in fish-scale tunics, farmers with crowns of starlight, a child with a beard drawn on in coal. The rules are unclear, but everyone is breaking them. You wander through the crowd, dizzy with curiosity. At one booth, a woman offers prophecies from yesterday. She hands you a scrap of bark that reads, "You almost were. You will be again." At another, a man sells clay flutes that only play one note, the wrong one. Children blow them proudly, each creating a wave of dissonant, joyful nonsense. You come upon a stage where masked performers reenact myths backwards. A dragon unkills a city. A god forgets how to be born. Tiamat sings Marduk into silence, her voice echoing backwards through time, pulling stars into her belly like coals. It's hilarious. And somehow, the audience roars with laughter as the actors fall out of character and into a pile of feathers. A rooster crows from inside someone's robe. You ask a nearby reveller what this place is. She shrugs tipsy on something that smells like fennel and regret. "It's a holiday, we made it up." "So did the gods," you laugh, then pause. Because behind the humour there's something raw. This is not just a joke, it's a ritual of resistance, a way to remember without obeying, to preserve the fragments without recaging them. You sit near the fire where a small group is gathered, each taking turns telling stories that begin with the phrase, "Once upon a time, this never happened." One tale speaks of a serpent who taught humans how to cry in colours. Another of a girl who swallowed a star and birthed a mirror. You feel something shift in your chest. The old myths aren't vanishing, they're multiplying. You spot the boy again. He's wearing a cape made of fish bones and feathers, and he's juggling 5 glowing stones like it's completely normal. "You like the festival?" He grins. You nod, overwhelmed. "It's the only way we stay sane," he adds, catching the last stone behind his back. You can't remember Tiamat properly without laughing a little. Otherwise your brain just leaks out your ears. You chuckle, then ask, "Is any of this real?" He squints at you. Do you feel scared? You shake your head. Do you feel seen? You nod. Then it's real enough. Historians still argue whether ancient Mesopotamian societies used theatre as spiritual subversion. Few tablets remain, but one fragment from Nippur reads, "The joke is the doorway through which the truth slips in undetected." The boy tosses you one of the glowing stones. You catch it, and for a moment you remember something, a version of yourself who never forgot how to believe in stories that contradicted themselves with style. The music rises. The tents shimmer. Someone hands you a goblet of something fizzy and dream-flavoured, and all around you the festival whirls on. You smile, because sometimes to honour the gods you have to misremember them beautifully. By morning the festival is gone, not packed up, not dismantled, gone. As if the ground exhaled and the tents blew away like dandelion seeds with theatrical aspirations. The fire pit is cold, the laughter is only an echo. A single clay flute lies where the main stage used to be, its hole chipped as if too much joy cracked it. You pocket it. Why not? You walk through the field of flattened grass and glittering ash, wondering if any of it really happened or if it only needed to happen to you. But the path ahead answers, because now for the first time there are footprints, not yours, not the boy's. These are wide, heavy, 3-toed impressions in the earth that shimmer faintly with dew or memory or both. You follow them. They lead to a rise, then a carved stone staircase, half buried, half defiant, leading down into a chamber of mirrors. Except there's no glass, only water. Walls of it flowing upward. Streams moving against gravity quietly, patiently. And between them, walking like he's being announced by invisible horns in a very confident wind machine, is a king. He wears no crown. He doesn't need one. His skin is patterned in faint scales, barely visible except when the light hits just right. His eyes are slit-pupilled, yet calm. His cloak trails behind him like a river that hasn't decided what to flood yet. You know him before he speaks. The murals warned you, the stories hinted. This is the king with Tiamat's eyes. You bow, slightly unsure why. He speaks. You've walked long enough, now listen. His voice is soft but spined like a lullaby wrapped around a blade. They thought the blood had diluted. They thought lineage could be erased by architecture. But myths migrate. He steps closer. His gaze pierces you not to wound but to excavate. I was born in the courts of Babylon, raised on stories that called my mother a mistake. But blood remembers, even when mouths forget. You ask if he's her son. He doesn't answer. Instead, he asks, "Do you think rebellion always looks like war?" You hesitate. He continues, "Sometimes rebellion is a child that survives, a ritual that mispronounces itself, a name passed in secret between lullabies." He turns and gestures to the walls of water. Inside them, visions flicker. A temple scribe writing a forbidden story in reverse. A servant girl whispering myths into her child's ear while the official prayers blared from the next room. A boy with webbed feet teaching frogs how to hum. We're still here, the king says, not as conquerors, as reminders. The room dims slightly, the air thickens not oppressively but with presence, and you see it behind the king emerging through the veil of water like a memory rising from a dream, a throne. But not of gold or stone. It's built from names. You can't read them all. Some shimmer in and out. Some are scratched over and rewritten by trembling hands. Some are too ancient for syllables, but one glows brightest Tiamat, not a warning, a foundation. You turn back to the king. He watches you with patient sadness. They fear what cannot be organized, so they banish it. But chaos is not destruction, it is possibility. You nod, because now you understand. This king is not the beginning of a rebellion. He is the result of one. Not a monster, not a god, a hybrid of both. A sovereign of contradiction. Historians would dismiss this, call it allegory. A syncretic symbol of divine tension. But here now, standing before him, you feel it like gravity. He is real. And his reign, it has already begun. You ask, "Finally, what should I do?" The king smiles gently. You already are. Every step forward reclaims a name. He gestures to the exit. Behind the throne, a corridor spirals upward like a conch shell carved into the living rock. You begin to walk, and from far below you hear one last whisper. The crown was never the point. The point was the memory. The spiral corridor climbs endlessly, narrowing with each turn, like the throat of some stone-bellied beast. Your footsteps echo in a rhythm not quite your own, as if someone once walked this path backward, and the stone remembers both directions. You emerge onto a ledge just before dawn. The sky is a bruised violet, the stars are dimming, but something feels wrong, incomplete. You look up and realize the constellations are missing, not just out of sight gone. Entire patches of sky where familiar patterns once twinkled now blink blank, like a sentence missing its verbs. Below in the valley temples flicker. Scholars are lighting incense. Astrologers are weeping quietly over their shattered tablets, holding their heads in trembling hands. You descend into the heart of this skyless city, where panic is soft but spreading. This is the place where stars were born into meaning. Now it's where meaning has filed for early retirement. You find a group of scribes pacing around an empty courtyard, chanting the names of stars that no longer answer. They look up at you like you've arrived holding a ladder to heaven. One approaches. His beard is chalked with ash. His eyes are wide. The sky, he whispers, doesn't trust us anymore. You nod, because what else can you do? He hands you a tablet, its inscription still wet with panic. When the sky turned, the names fell. What rises now cannot be charted. You look around. Birds are flying in circles, disoriented. Sundials spin slowly like lazy whirlpools of time. And you feel watched, not by eyes, by the absence of them. Something in the air is folding like pages closing in a book no one finished reading. The boy appears again, older than ever now, wearing a robe stitched with night itself, his hair long and starless. You see it, don't you? He asks quietly. The sky has withdrawn its approval. You ask why? Because they tried to name everything, even the chaos, even her. He points to the horizon, and there, barely visible, is a glimmering thread unraveling across the dawn. A ripple, a seam, a scar. You understand. Tiamat's memory has risen too far, too fast. The stories have returned. The figurines have hummed. The net has unraveled. And now the sky isn't punishing anyone. It's refusing to participate. You walk with the boy into the observatory, a massive dome cracked open like an egg dropped in divine haste. Telescopes lie broken. Star maps curl and twitch like living things in pain. On the far wall, someone has scrawled in red, "What do we pray to when the stars shut their eyes?" Historians still debate the Mesopotamians' obsession with the night sky, how they believed the heavens were a script, each star a syllable in the god's sentence. But what if the sentence ended? What if the stars simply quit? You kneel and place your hand on the floor. It's warm and pulsing, just like the salt flats, just like her. You whisper, "We remember you," and the earth answers. Above, a single star blinks back into place, not where it used to be, somewhere new. The boy smiles. They're watching again, not from the sky, from the soil. You walk outside. People are gathered now, staring upward, pointing, not in fear, in wonder. Because the constellations are changing. The old patterns are reforming, but differently. New stories are being written. The seven-headed flame, the spiral singer, the mother without edges, no longer gods of control and conquest, but gods of possibility. You look to the boy. He shrugs. She's taking back her grammar. You laugh, because of course she is. And as the first light of dawn breaks across the respelled heavens, you realize you are standing not in a world ending, but a world revised. The stars stay strange. All day astrologers gather in small circles, with fingers stained in ink and desperation, trying to redraw their charts with rulers that now tremble. Some weep, some laugh, some stare into their hands, as if hoping their palms might form new constellations. You walk past them quietly, the spiral on your palm pulsing in rhythm with the sky. Eventually, the land leads you north into a dry valley lined with brittle reeds and cracked stone ledges. There is no wind, no bird call, only the sound of your feet crunching over soil that remembers every footprint ever made. And then softly, a voice calls your name, but not your modern name, a name that hasn't been spoken in centuries, a name that arrives in your bones before your ears, a name with no vowels and too many endings. You stop. Who remembers me, you ask? And the answer comes not in words, but in the shape of a shadow moving through the reeds. She steps into view, not a god, not a beast, a whisper, wearing the form of a woman, tall, pale-skinned, with hair that flows like ink through water. Her eyes, liquid amber, slit pupils, spiral irises, a familiarity that makes your chest tighten. This is Lahamu, firstborn of Tiamat, elder sister of the sea, the name forgotten so thoroughly that even historians miss her entirely between genealogies. She smiles. It's not unkind, just tired. You've done well, she says, her voice like reeds brushing glass. Most who walk this far either turn back or become libraries. You blink. She shrugs. It happens. Too much memory gathers in one place, the body gives way, becomes parchment. You sit on a nearby rock, suddenly aware of the weight behind your eyes. Lahamu sits beside you, not above. Beside, we weren't all like her, she says after a long silence. Tiamat roared. I observed. She gestures at the valley. This was mine once, not a kingdom, a question. You ask her what question. She looks at you sideways. Can chaos exist without becoming violence? Historians, if they mention Lahamu at all, often conflate her with vague river goddesses or confuse her with lesser-known fertility spirits. Her myth was too subtle, too circular for the linear record to hold. But here she is, real, worn, unbothered by omission. We were the first, she continues, before thrones, before justice. We were uncategorized. You tell her what you've seen, the beast, the chain, the net, the king, the laughter, the stars. She listens without blinking, as if she'd dreamed it all long ago and was just waiting for someone to confirm it. Then she leans forward. Do you know what happens next? You shake your head. She smiles again, wistful. Nothing, pause, and everything you don't understand. The war ended long ago, she explains, but the silence that followed, that was louder than anything. She places her palm over yours. The spiral on your hand glows faintly, then dissolves. Now you carry it inside. You ask why you... Because you listened, because you laughed, because you walked without needing victory. The wind shifts for the first time all day, and the reeds begin to sing, not with words, with patterns, rising, falling, discordant, then suddenly harmonious. Music made by things that never studied scales. Lahamu closes her eyes. They are waking, not in anger, in permission. You rise. The valley hums beneath your feet, a soft affirmation that something old has been acknowledged, not recaged. Lahamu fades back into the reeds, not vanishing, just slipping back into context. As you turn to leave, her voice follows barely louder than a heartbeat when they ask what you saw. Tell them the silence had sisters. You nod and continue. Behind you, the reeds whisper your true name, and the wind carries it like a lullaby, soft, repetitive, unstoppable. You walk north until the ground forgets how to be dry. The earth softens underfoot, squelching with a wet certainty that something is growing, though you see no crops, no orchards, no signs of tending. Only clay, miles of it, smooth, pale, damp, not the kind of clay that waits to be shaped, the kind that is already remembering what it once was. You've arrived at the low basin the tablets called the Field of Scales and Smoke, a place where it's said the children of Tiamat will rise again, not by birth, but by return. Ahead, the mist thickens, curling around itself like fog, trying to read its own autobiography. And then you see them. Figures, half-formed, rising from the clay, like memories surfacing from long sleep. Some are human-shaped until they breathe. Others begin as serpents, then unfold into beings with 4 arms and no symmetry. One drips with steam as though freshly carved from the belly of the earth itself. They are the children of Tiamat. Not resurrected, recalled, you hide behind a stone outcrop, heart fluttering with awe, reverence, and yes, a little fear, because they are not just returning, they are rehearsing. One stretches its limbs and tests a voice that sounds like 3 flutes weeping into a canyon. Another draws circles in the clay, summoning sparks from the soil. A smaller one eats a worm and then begins to chant in a tongue that doesn't care for consonants. They're not aggressive. They're figuring out how to be. This isn't an invasion, it's a re-entry. You move closer. The mist parts for you reluctantly. It knows your feet. It smelled your breath. The beings take notice, but they do not flee, nor do they attack. They observe. You realize you're the only one shaped entirely by memory. You're the one carrying the fragments of stories told wrong or too carefully, or not at all. One of them approaches, a tall, scaled creature with mossy eyebrows and fingers that twitch in rhythm to your pulse. It reaches out not with a weapon, but with a question. Are we still allowed? You feel the weight of that, not as a decision, as a mirror. You speak softly. You never left. You were paused. It nods. And behind it, the others exhale in relief, then movement. They begin to dance, not in rhythm, not in rows, each in their own form, their own truth. It is less a dance and more a celebration of contradictions. Some melt into the clay between steps, others hover mid-air. One turns into a swarm of moths and reforms beside a crumbling pillar. Above them the smoke begins to rise, not from fire but from memory catching light. The mist becomes a mural shaping into fleeting images of moments that never made the epics. A serpent comforting a crying shepherd, a child teaching her scaled mother how to hum, a temple where laughter was the only sacrifice. You weep, quietly, because this isn't horror, it's repair, and it's messy. Historians still argue whether the field of smoke was symbolic of renewal or feared as a place of contamination. Some texts speak of pilgrims returning from this region, unable to dream in straight lines. You believe it now. A bell tolls in the distance. But there's no bell, just a signal, a shift. The dance slows. The beings turn toward the east, where the horizon glows not gold, not red, but something else. A color that doesn't yet have a name. The clay hardens beneath your feet. The wind changes direction. And one final phrase forms in the mist above the field. We are not the end of the story. We are its question mark. You turn away because their return isn't for you. It's for the world they were never allowed to finish imagining. You walk out of the clay field with your boots heavy and your spine tingling, as if the smoke and scale had threaded themselves into your marrow. You don't feel burdened. You feel recorded. And somewhere inside you a voice keeps repeating, they are not monsters. They are footnotes, denied ink. The land shifts again. You find yourself approaching a strange structure, not a temple, not a ruin, a dining hall perhaps, low, circular, and carved into the earth like a secret willing to feed you only if you ask nicely. Inside it's dim and warm. The walls are painted in black ash. Rows of stone benches encircle a central pit. In that pit, a fireless flame flickers, made not of heat but of memory. Seated around the chamber are the scholars who eat ashes. You've read about them barely. One obscure clay tablet mentioned a heretical order who believed that to truly preserve history one had to consume it, literally. They would take sacred tablets, burn them carefully, mix the ashes with wine or grain, and ingest them during quiet ceremonies, not as sacrifice, as union. And here they are, old, young, genderless and genderful, robed in threadbare garments, etched with crumbling glyphs. Some have ink under their fingernails. Others wear necklaces made of crushed styluses. Their eyes are hollowed with reverence. No one speaks. One gestures for you to sit. You do. Another hands you a small bowl. Inside fine grey ash mixed with honey and fig. It smells like old scrolls and rain-soaked cedar. You hesitate. The oldest scholar leans forward and whispers, "To remember her is not enough. You must embody what was forbidden." You lift the bowl and take a bite. It's sweet, then bitter, then sweet again, and suddenly images rush into your mouth like a choir of quiet truths. A priest burying a dragon's name beneath his own. A child refusing to memorize a hymn because she didn't like how it ended. A scribe trembling as he wrote the word Tiamat in the corner of a grocery tablet, hiding her between lentils and barley. You finish the bowl. The scholars nod, once solemn. Then one by one they begin to chant. Soft syllables, strange rhythms, a language made from footnotes, from marginalia, from commentaries scrawled in rage and grief and joy. It is not beautiful. It is real. You join them. Your voice doesn't match the melody, but that's the point. This is a song designed to resist harmony, because harmony was used to erase. They chant until the flame in the pit brightens just a little, enough to cast shadows that look like scales or wings or pen strokes. The oldest scholar reaches into the fireless flame and pulls out a scroll, not charred, not aged, but new. It bears no title, just one phrase. This is not myth. This is reintroduction. They hand it to you. You take it, hands shaking. One scholar says, "You carry her now, so carry her gently." And they rise. Each walks to the edge of the chamber and dissolves softly, like dust taking a bow. You are alone, but not. You walk out with the scroll under your arm and a warm thrum in your chest. Outside, the wind has changed again. It carries ash, not like ruin, like ritual. And overhead clouds begin to spiral, not threateningly, but like dancers mid-turn. She is moving again, not through destruction, through digestible memory. The scroll in your arms feels heavier with each step, as if the words inside are fermenting, not rotting, ripening. You can feel it vibrating faintly, like it wants to unroll itself, but is polite enough to wait. You walk until the ground rises beneath your feet like a breath being held. A hill circular and wide, scarred with old tracks and new footsteps. At the top stands a half-finished scaffold of rope and bone, hung with fragments of netting frayed familiar. It's the net, but not Marduk's net. This one's being woven by mortals. A group of people, scribes, potters, midwives, children, those who never made it into the myths, work in silence, tying fibers together with ritualistic slowness. Each knot pulses faintly as it's made. You realize what they're doing. They're respinning the net, but not to trap, to catch the story as it falls. A young woman, arms tattooed with constellations that no longer exist, notices you. She waves you over and offers a spindle made of driftwood and wrapped in sea silk. No words, just the gesture. You join in. The threads are strange, some coarse, others silky, a few. Not entirely thread. One sparkles, one purrs. Together you weave. Each knot you tie hums back at you, whispering bits of language. The wound cannot be sealed, only sung. She was not wrath, she was rhythm. Order was always afraid of rhythm. You notice the net isn't symmetrical, on purpose. Every section contradicts another. It's not a web of capture, it's a language of permission. Someone pins the scroll from the scholars at the center, stretching it taut like a constellation reborn. The glyphs begin to move, crawling across the parchment and knitting themselves into the threads. Someone chuckles nearby. You turn. It's the boy, older still. Now he walks with a staff carved from fossilized reed, his tail now part of his shadow instead of his body. We're catching minds now, he says, gazing at the growing net. Before they slip into forgetting, you ask what happens if the net finishes. He shrugs. Then we find out what the story becomes without handlers. Historians still argue about the purpose of Babylonian nets, whether they were physical tools, metaphorical constructs, or cosmological frameworks. What they never asked was, what if the net wanted to catch the gods too? You tie one final knot. It sings back, thank you for allowing contradiction. A ripple moves through the net, and all at once it lifts, not into the air, into the mind. The weavers step back as the net vanishes, not as failure, as fulfillment, because it was never meant to be held. It was meant to trigger the remembering. You sit. The others leave quietly, as if dismissed by a dream that gave them homework. Alone now, you stare up at the sky where the stars have returned, rearranged, irregular, radiant. New constellations are forming. You see one that looks like a spiral wrapped around an open mouth, another a fish swimming through an eye. You realize the net isn't gone. It's everywhere now, not to bind, to connect. And somewhere a voice like warm salt water against skin whispers, thank you for weaving. Now loosen. You close your eyes and feel the knots inside you begin to untangle. The path turns downward now, winding like a serpent, ready to shed its final skin. You feel the curve of the earth beneath your feet, as if gravity itself is guiding you toward a question. The valley ahead is split by a gash in the stone, a narrow cleft that breathes warm air, not of fire, but of soil and sleep. You hesitate. This isn't a doorway, it's an invitation. You step inside. The passage narrows, moss lines the walls, faint pulses of bioluminescence flicker in spiraling patterns that feel more emotional than aesthetic. You walk for minutes, or hours. Time becomes more of a courtesy here. At last the space opens, a cavern stretches wide and low, filled with shallow pools, hanging roots, and the soft sounds of dripping echoes. In the center, a being waits. You recognize them. Not from memory, but from myth. The last child of Tiamat. Small, quiet, seated cross-legged on a rock. Their eyes shimmer with liquid gold, and a spiral wraps gently around each wrist, like a tattoo drawn in motion. They smile as you enter. You've come far, they say softly. You nod. Words feel too stiff now. The being gestures to the pools. Inside them, scenes flicker. Visions you've seen before, distorted by reflection. The salt flats breathing. The chained beast humming lullabies. The scholars eating memory like honey. A festival where forgetting was celebrated with joy. These are echoes, they say, but you're ready now. You ask for what? The being tilts their head to choose. You're shown two pools. One swirls with clarity. Calm waters, steady stars, names, neatly labeled gods, firmly defeated myths, catalogued like artifacts in glass cases. The other turbulent, alive, flickering with inconsistencies, spirals, laughter, wrong notes, weeping ink. A world where contradiction is allowed to bloom, and chaos creates rather than devours. You can carry one forward, they say. Only one. You hesitate. Then you step toward the second, and you kneel. Because the first was comfort. The second is truth. The child of Tiamat smiles wider. That was your final test. The pool goes still, and then ripples outward. The entire cavern hums, not loudly, reverently, as if the walls themselves are sighing in relief. The being stands and offers you their hand. There's one last place. You walk together to the far end of the chamber where a narrow tunnel leads upward. Light trickles in from above. You ascend in silence. At the top is a cave mouth. Beyond it, open air, a night sky and stars shaped like questions. The being looks at you, then reaches toward your chest, not violently, just gently, and pulls out a single thread of light. It coils into their palm. They whisper, "Thank you for remembering us on purpose." Then they fade, no flash, just a soft undoing. You step out onto the ridge alone, and below you the world waits, not bowed, not corrected, open. And in your pocket a single clay flute, still chipped, still tuned to the wrong note. You raise it to your lips and play. The sound is ugly, joyful, ancient, and the wind sings along. The night wraps around you like a cloak lined with stories. You stand at the edge of the world, or perhaps its soft beginning, the clay flute warm in your hand, the stars still spelling strange new constellation shapes that will never fit neatly into textbooks or temple walls. And yet here they are, still shining, still true. You take one last breath of the cool, salt-laced air. The silence now feels gentle, not emptiness, but room. Room for new myths, for remembered beasts, for gods who didn't get their footnotes. Behind you, the cave breathes one final sigh, a memory settling in, a story giving thanks. You start walking down the slope into the valley, not toward a city or a shrine or a throne, but toward the soil. And as you move, you notice others stepping out from shadow figures from all the places you passed. The faceless priest from the temple without fire. The woman who misremembered her way into ritual. The ink-eyed scholar and the children made of mist. Even the boy now whole, now gone, now grinning at the edge of your vision. They do not speak. They do not need to. You've all played your part in this remembering. You reach the base of the hill where a shallow lake weights its surface, trembling with the reflection of a sky that no longer follows rules. You kneel, not in worship, in readiness. The wind slows, the earth softens, and a final phrase curls into your mind like steam. We who were left unnamed have found our way home. You reach into your satchel and retrieve the scroll. It no longer vibrates, it glows. You unfurl it over the surface of the water, and it dissolves, not sinking, not floating, becoming breath, becoming memory, becoming the pause at the end of a sacred sentence just before someone says, "Tell me again." You close your eyes, and you rest. Not in forgetting, but in the warmth of everything once hidden. The stars dim overhead, pulling their curtains shut one by one. The reeds rustle a lullaby they learned from her long ago. And far, far beneath your ribs, her pulse becomes yours. You lie there a long time, not asleep, not fully awake, just resting in the stillness between. The breath in your lungs slows and your thoughts float like leaves on the surface of a still pool, drifting, circling without urgency. There's no more story to chase, no footsteps to follow. You've walked the spiral all the way inward, and now it's soft. Soft as clay between your fingers, soft as the hush of starlight landing on water, The night no longer presses against you, it holds you, and everything you met, the children, the laughter, the forgotten names, they're not gone. They've settled beside you, not ghosts, not echoes, but something deeper, a comfort that doesn't need explanation. Just as the earth wraps its warmth around your tired bones, the memory of Tiamat cradles your breath in return. There is no judgment here, only recognition, only rest. And as you feel the edges of the world stretch out wide, gentle and infinite, you know you are not a footnote. You're not a mistake. You are a myth remembered just in time. So sleep now, let the night spiral around you. Let her lullaby reach you, slow, salty, and true. Let the sea inside you go still. And let your name, whatever it was before, sink softly beneath the surface. End of script. Sweet dreams.